In study number 9, Clodomir pulls no punches. Out of the gate, this one has big intervals that go fast, and he made me work for it. And don't get me wrong, I had fun working on it, but I had a lot of woodshedding to do. Hi there, I'm Deanna. Welcome to the Trumpet Study Project. This is the Clodomir edition. It's a series of videos for trumpet players building, or if you're like me, you're rebuilding your trumpet playing skills. In this video, I will play Clodomir's study number 9 from his 70 Little Studies book. Before I get to that, though, I want to say that Clodomir really has been working us up to this point. Studies 1 through 5 had us moving around a bit. 6, 7, and 8 upped the game with lots of interval jumps, some of them pretty big. But in study 9, takes it to the next level with its big opening octave interval, and then a 7th, out of the gate in the first bar, and then of course all it follows, and all at a nice clip. And yes, it's a tempo we've been working at. 7 and 8 were both at 126. It's only 2 lines of music, but this one, they gave me a run for my money. So just how do you play this one at the target speed, hitting all the notes and hopefully sounding okay? Well, eventually I succeeded in bringing up the speed, and you'll hear what I arrived at in just a second. And then after that, I'm going to share the 2 things I focused on to bring it up. And actually, when I first started working on this video, I was going to talk about 2 things, these 2 things. And then I was thinking, I'm going to just try and keep this study, the video shorter, and I'll just talk about the second one. But the first topic is too important to leave out, given the size of most of these intervals that we're looking at in 9. So we are going to talk about what is actually my biggest go-to for challenging lines like this, and a lot of music. We're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about what I did to bring the tempo up of these intervals, how I woodshed it. Plus, I have a strategy for you for helping make 126 or pretty much any tempo feel easier to play. So with that said, here's my current best version of Clodomir number 9, and then I'll share what helped me to learn it. Maybe this will help you too. All right, here we go. You know, when I first started working on this study, I was like, hey, let's practice number 9. But then it was, hey, this is kind of hard and fast to, I better practice these intervals. And not just that, I needed to really dial down and get organized with it. You see, my biggest challenge with this study was the speed for playing such big intervals. But my goal was playing this study in a comfy, kind of easy way that let me bop through it as I was playing it. So to do that, what I first focused on is pretty much my go-to with lines of music like this one, with the big intervals, and well, kind of all music in a way. I first needed to be able to play the notes that would let me bop along at the speed I was heading for. So this is how I went about it. To get these notes, I'm giving a lot of air and a lot of push. So I don't know how it's showing through my my camera, but it's bop, bop, bop. I'm giving lots of push, lots of accent, if you will, to get those notes, and especially the high ones, but air, 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 lots of air. And that's so I can find them. I can pull back after that once I know where it is, but gotta find it. Hear the accent on that? And then in reverse, going down, I'm throwing lots of air at that bottom note because that's a really big jump going down. That was a little nicer. And while we're doing this, there's something kind of helpful that, well, we can make note of. I've been talking about lots of air, and the page gives you that indication because Clodomir's put accents on all his bottom notes. I think almost every 8th note on the first 8th note of the groups of 2 has an accent. Think air, air up, air up, air up, air, and then when you're coming down, you know, ba-da-ba, air. Let that marking on the page be well, do the marking on the page because it says accent, but use that as a tool, a visual tool. Give it air, give it air, give it air. That's your cue. And while I was working to play with lots of air, I was also working to keep this in mind. Finding the centers, filling them out with air, lots of air at them. Slow down. Take the time, find the centers, then bring your speed up. It's super important to find those centers. That's you've got something to, when I talk about bouncing off of the note, that's what we're bouncing off of, is that center, that full, because if you're just really narrow, you got nothing there. Big and fat. So what I'm talking about here ultimately is tone, centered and full. In my opinion, it's super important. It's almost like the most important thing. And this is why it's always my first consideration when I'm playing. But what I found is, if your sound is pinched rather than open and full, it's harder to play. Or in reverse, if you have an open sound, there's less resistance. And with this study, if we're not careful, when we go to play it as fast as it's asking us to play, it can cost us with our tone if we haven't thought about it ahead of time. And conversely, if we haven't thought about it, our tone that we arrive at can affect how easy it is to play or not play this study. So we really want to aim for letting ourselves produce as full and warm a tone as possible. And not, hear how pinched that is? Now we don't want to be blasting it so much. Like, I'm not sure what that did to my microphone on the camera, but we don't want to, it's not a blasting sound, it's a full sound. And so that's what I'm talking about. It's a full sound, not just piercing. Big and wide. It just comes out when it's allowed to be free. So it is something to work on though, and it's how I figured it out for myself. So I would try it one way and then I would try it another way and I would see what was happening. And I would try to keep doing it as open as I could, assessing as I went along. Then what you do is you take it back to what you're working on and try to bring it into it as much as you can. And it's going to be a process. It'll come over time as long as you're thinking about it, and then keep coming back and doing little exercises like trying to do it pinched and then opening it up. It'll work. And then you can start to bring up your speed in whatever you're working on, whether it's Clodomir or other things. And speaking of bringing up the speed, after I was starting to feel more comfortable with the study at the slower tempo, I realized I needed to move from, I'm really just winging it, there's no organized plan here, to getting more focused. I needed a version of the work your way up exercise approach that I talked about in the video for study number 5, and which is also covered in the PDF resource. That's now available finally. It's called Trumpet Practice Unlocked, and I'll leave a link in the description for you. So anyway, I needed a variation of that exercise idea for getting more comfortable with the opening octave jump in particular, but ultimately all of the rest of it that followed. So I pulled out some manuscript paper and I wrote some exercises that I could read because, well, initially I was trying to wing it and reading is just easier than that. In the end, I only really worked the intervals for C major and F major going up and down, and then the one from C going downward and up again for the big leaps down near the end in the study. For this, my metronome became super helpful because it kept me in check as I started to bring up the speed, and I love being able to track my progress. It helps me to see my progress because I can see where I start. 104. And then we'll obviously, as we move forward, I can see where I'm going. 107. I can see that progress, and it's motivating, to be honest. And then what I did is I just worked it. 114. Playing these exercises over and over, slowly bumping up the speed, bumping it down, bumping it up, and then slowly up and up. 118. Over and over, and well, you can ask my family what they've been listening to for the last few weeks. 120. And then what I would do is I would go back into the study and play it, see where I was at, and then go back to these exercises. By the way, I've tidied up my handwritten notes and will post a link to them in the description below. It's just a single page, so feel free to grab your copy of it if you want. 124. Do 126. 128. Okay, so the target tempo is 126, right? When I first started, it felt really fast to me. But eventually, I started closing in on it, and then I did this helpful strategy to make 126 feel slower. By pushing myself all the way up to 140 for the quarter note, 126 became much slower feeling. And this is how I brought up my ability to play number 9 at quarter note to 126 with that feeling, or close to it, that I was aiming for and mentioned at the beginning, that comfy and easy feeling, so I could go bopping through the study. It's important that I share that while I was playing these interval exercises, the notes didn't always sound properly. I'd miss some notes, or I'd fluff beginnings, as no doubt you heard. But with repetition and focusing on my tone and what I wanted to have happen, speed coming up, my speed and my dexterity did start to improve, and my accuracy became more consistent. Something I was wondering is, have you been working on number 9? Because I would love to know how it's going for you in the comments, and if you've got any strategies for learning it that you can share with us. For my work on number 9, I also really leaned on what I talk about in this video over here. It's the idea that guides and inspires me for so much of what I do in the practice room. If you haven't seen it, I suggest check it out. It's really helpful. And when it's ready, study number 10 will be right up here. That's it. I hope this was helpful. See you next time.